Hi everybody and welcome to English for You. I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're going to look a little bit about handwriting and whether a particular kind of handwriting is still important in the modern world. So what was the last long piece of handwriting you did? And why did you choose to write it by hand, whatever it was?
Really good. Well, of course, it was in English. It wasn't Chinese handwriting.
Okay.
That's something I just have never really mastered. I don't know. The last long piece. I've written a few notes. Of course.
Shopping list,
to remember them or things like that. But oh gosh, it must have been when I worked at a company and I was learning all sorts of things very quickly about the business. So I was having these meetings and talking to people and asking questions. And of course, I couldn't walk around with a laptop computer, and typing everything in on my phone wasn't really useful. So I had a book and a pen, and I would, write it out just kind of like when I was in school taking notes. So kind of like that. But that was a few years ago for sure. How about you?
I still do quite a lot of writing by hand whenever I'm writing fiction.
Oh, good. So you don't type out all your stories.
I do if I'm writing at home. I will type it straight on the computer.
I see.
But if I'm out and about, say I've gone to work and I'm going to write in my lunch break in a restaurant.
An idea suddenly strikes you.
It's not easy to bring my computer around, as you said. So I will write by hand and I'll type it up later. And that typing up is almost the first edit.
Right, exactly. You can kind of correct your ideas and fix that grammar. You didn't have time to spell things correctly. So it is really useful. But as we're learning today, it's something that might be kind of dying out, especially a very particular kind of English or Western style handwriting that we're going to look at in our article, What is Cursive and Do We Still Need It?
Reading.
What is cursive, and do we still need it? Cursive is a style of writing in which letters are joined together. This creates a charming flow of words that seems to dance across the page. However, fewer and fewer education systems around the world are teaching cursive. Instead, they're focusing more on keyboard skills. Of course, this is important in the modern digital world. But what will we lose if cursive dies out? One main benefit of cursive is that it aids development. Studies have shown learning cursive improves students' motor skills and memory functions. This is true of all kinds of writing, but cursive in particular requires concentration and practice. Another point to consider is that knowing how to write in cursive means you'll be better at reading it. This is important for understanding historical documents. One other benefit is that a cursive signature is harder to copy than a printed one. So why not learn cursive before it vanishes? You'll be helping keep a beautiful form of writing alive.
So the article begins by answering the first question in the title. What is cursive?
Yeah, let's find out what that's all about.
It says cursive is a style of writing in which letters are joined together. It's kind of like they've almost got little tails, and that tail becomes the start of the next letter. So each word, pretty much everything, is all joined together. I'm terrible at it.
Are you?
I'm so bad that my teachers made me stop. They couldn't read it.
They couldn't read your cursive handwriting. Of course, yes, here we are talking about handwriting. So writing with a pen or a pencil or something like that. And yeah, with cursive words, one word will have all the letters joined up, basically. So it's just another way for the reader to kind of, read the words quickly. But because you are joining the words together, it can make it a little hard, especially if you're messy. As the article continues, it says, this creates a charming flow of words that seems to dance across the page. Yeah, it is kind of charming. It is kind of attractive, this flow of words, and it seems to dance across the page. It really is something that if you do it well, a lot of people will comment on it, and you might even get jobs writing out birthday cards or wedding invitations because people think of cursive writing as being charming. And this is one of our vocab words today. This is an adjective. When we say something's charming, it's attractive, it's something we like. It might make you kind of happy or in a good mood, kind of bring some cheerfulness to your life, but it's also cute, pretty, attractive, something like that. For example, here's our sentence. Behind the house was a charming little garden with a small waterfall and pond. So it wasn't just, some plants sitting there next to the grass. No, it was kind of cute. You could imagine little frogs living in there. It had this sort of attractive appeal to it.
So I said at school I was bad at this, but the teachers did try and teach me how to do it.
Okay.
But this is changing. As our article says, however, fewer and fewer education systems around the world are teaching cursive. Schools just aren't doing it as much anymore. There'll be places where it's not taught.
Yes, exactly. And if you think about it for a few seconds, you can probably guess why they're not teaching cursive handwriting. Instead, as the article explains, they're focusing more on keyboard skills. Well, yeah, typing on a computer or on a smartphone or anything like that is a lot more common these days and kind of the way most people do their writing. I had to think back a few years to when was the last time I wrote a lot of cursive handwriting, but probably yesterday was the last time I typed a lot on a keyboard. So it isn't as useful as working on your keyboard skills or, how fast and how well you type. I don't type that well, I have to admit.
I've got better through practice.
You do practice more than I do.
So the article says, of course, this, meaning this focus on keyboard skills, this is important in the modern digital world. But what will we lose if cursive dies out? Let's take a look at the word digital. This is an adjective and it just means using computers, the internet, rather than something that exists in the real world. So if you're talking about emails, they're like digital letters. If you're talking about a website, that's a digital location of some sort rather than a real place. So the modern world is pretty digital. It's all computers, phones, internet, and so on. So what happens then if cursive dies out?
Well, we'll find out. And of course, here we have this phrasal verb to die out. Now, when we talk about things dying out, we don't always mean that their life is ending, the way that living things will die. No, here we're talking about the way things go away over time because, well, things change, okay? So if we're talking about cursive writing, people don't do it as much anymore. They type a lot more, so cursive writing could die out. In the same way that people traveling by horse has died out, or people traveling by sailing ships around the world, that kind of travel has died out over time. People don't use it, time has changed, the technology, just the way things change, or fashions change too, and old fashions die out as new fashions and new styles come in. All right, let's get back to our article and see what we can learn, or what might be a benefit of cursive writing.
That's exactly right. Why should we keep using cursive when we don't need to when we have phones and stuff?
Maybe it's just dying out naturally.
Well, it probably is, but there are reasons to keep it around.
Okay.
The article says one main benefit of cursive is that it aids development. So something that the more you do it, that you get better at certain other things, especially when you're young.
I see. So we're talking, of course, about the development of the writers, the people who are actually using this style of writing. How can it help them develop? How can it help them learn and things like that? Well, the article explains, studies have shown learning cursive improves students' motor skills and memory functions. Okay, those two things are very important for your development. As you grow from a child to an adult, you become smarter and more skilled at things. Well, apparently, cursive writing can improve or make better the students or the young people's motor skills and memory functions. Now, here when we talk about motor skills, we're not talking about your skill at driving a car or, racing around in the rain or something like that. This isn't a motor or an engine like we might find on a scooter or on a car. We're talking here about the way your brain and your muscles work together. So your motor skills would be things like making sure that your hands are going where your eyes want them to, or doing things that you need to be very careful and use very, very special movements with, and not drop things all the time. If you're dropping things all the time, if you can't throw a ball in a straight line, well, you might need to work on your motor skills. A lot of people say playing video games might actually be good for people's motor skills, right? You have to make the thing on the screen do what your hands want it to do, and your eyes and brain. That's all involved in improving your motor skills. For example, the accident might leave Rick with only a little motor function in his right arm. Oh, okay, so his brain and his arm and the messages going back and forth between them, they're not working so well after this accident.
Right, so his motor function has been affected, but writing cursive can help with memory functions.
True.
So we've used that word twice. Let's find out what function means. So the word function describes the purpose for which something is designed and why it exists, but also what it does. And that's what we're talking about here. What is motor function? It's what our hands can do, how we can grip things, how we can move them. What are memory functions? How well we remember things, how well and how quickly we can call up knowledge we got a long time ago. You see someone, do you recognize them straight away? That's a memory function. Can you remember all the information for a test? That's a memory function. Here's another example. A smartphone has many useful functions, from internet browser to GPS, flashlight to telephone, just to name a few. So that's how this kind of writing can help young learners.
Absolutely. Well, the article explains actually this is true of all kinds of writing. So all kinds of writing are good at helping you with your motor skills and your memory functions. You have to use those motor skills to make your letters look nice. And of course, memory function, a lot of people find that if you write something down, you remember it a lot more easily than if you just read it or maybe even type it. So this is true of all kinds of writing. They're all good for you. But cursive in particular requires concentration and practice. Yes, I remember a lot more time spent in grade 2 or grade 3 working on the cursive writing than we spent in maybe grade 1 writing on the simple ABC, the block letters in particular. Yeah, when we use this phrase in particular, we're kind of focusing on something that we're paying a little bit more attention to, or we're kind of taking a list of things, but then sort of bringing attention or bringing a bit more focus to one item in that list in particular. So you might say, I like all kinds of music, jazz, opera, but in particular, I like hip hop or something like that. So among all of these, this one a little bit more.
Yeah, and this is because to do this kind of writing well, it requires concentration. You really have to think about what you're doing, and it requires practice. You've got to do it again and again. So
Absolutely.
That's how it builds these motor and memory functions. The verb to require means to need, to demand. You have to have it. You can't just do good cursive if you're not paying attention, and you won't get it right first time. You've got to do it again and again. Remember how to link the letters and how to do it in a way that other people can read, a step I never got to. Here's another way we can use require. I'm sorry, we require you to wear a face mask if you want to come in here.
You need to do it.
Yep.
That's an absolute must. And here we also use this noun concentration. When we talk about concentration, We talk about using your mind to focus on one thing at a time and doing it with all of your attention. Attention and concentration, they're quite similar. If you're in a noisy room and there's a lot of things going on and you're trying to read a book or study something really complicated, it might be difficult because your concentration is always being broken by the noises and the action around you. So concentration is something that you need when you're trying to do something that requires some brain power and some focus and maybe a little bit more time. It's not for the easy things that you do in your life that you can just wake up and do. No, this is something a little more challenging, so it will take a bit more concentration or mental focus.
So that's all one idea of why cursive writing is beneficial, why maybe we should still have people teach it.
Okay.
Another point, as the article says, another point to consider is that knowing how to write in cursive means you'll be better at reading it.
Well, sure, absolutely. If you know how to write it and you know what the letters all mean and the different shapes, because some of them, I think like the capital G or the Z, they can look quite different than what you would see if you just write out or type out a big G or Z. So yeah, it will make you better at reading it. And why is that important? Well, the article says this is important for understanding historical documents. Yeah, if you want to read the U.S. Declaration of Independence, that wasn't typed out and printed out on a computer. It was written in cursive, I believe. So if you want to read anything from long ago or even more than 50 or 100 years ago, you will definitely need to know how to read cursive. These historical documents, most of them were not typed out. So yes, these old documents like the Declaration of Independence, something from hundreds of years ago, something that's important to history. This is where we would use the adjective historical. It's about history, it's important to history, it's the kind of thing you would study in history or see in a museum or watch in a documentary. Now, a lot of old things from the past are still around, and many of them are interesting, but if it's your grandfather's baseball hat from high school, it's not really historical. Now, if your grandfather then became a world-famous baseball player, well, yes, that baseball cap would be historical, but old things from the past that are related to some important or interesting event from history, that's where we would describe something as historical. A document, a piece of clothing, a building, a painting, a person, whatever it is. If it's from the past and it's important in history, we could use the adjective historical. For example, this museum has lots of historical clothing and fashions from the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. Sounds interesting.
And in this case, we're talking about historical documents. And a document is one piece of paper, could be a very long one, or it could be several pieces of paper all about the same subject. They're just following on one page after page. And it's got writing and maybe pictures or other things on it, like a seal to show who did it or something like that. But anything is a document as long as it's real. You print it off a computer, it's a document. Really, we still use the word to mean I'm going to open a new document on Microsoft Word. We still use it, even though it's on screen.
Absolutely. Now back to the article. One other benefit is that a cursive signature is harder to copy than a printed one. Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah, a lot of people, especially in Western countries, they will always sign their signature or their name written out in handwriting. And if you do it in a cursive style with that kind of special looped letters that only you do it that way, it is a lot harder to copy than if you just write out each letter individually. If someone wants to copy your name, it's much easier for them to copy those single, simple letters than that longer sort of artistic signature in cursive. And yeah, when we talk about a signature, this is your name that you have written by hand. If you meet a famous movie star, you might find a piece of paper and, oh, can I get you to sign your name? That's their signature. We might also call it their autograph, especially if it's someone who is very famous. But if you go to the bank, if you go to the post office, if you're signing a credit card or something like that, you'll have to write your signature or your name written out by hand.
right? And the article concludes by asking, so why not learn cursive before it vanishes? So give it a chance. If it's going to become rarer, there will be fewer people teaching it in schools, it might vanish. To vanish simply means to disappear. It doesn't quite mean the same as die out, because that would probably mean it's not coming back. But vanish will mean you can't see it anymore. You can't find it anywhere. For example, the moon vanished behind some thick clouds, and suddenly the night became much darker.
It was there, and then it was gone. Back to the article, you'll be helping keep a beautiful form of writing alive. Absolutely. You might save yourself from having someone steal your money from a bank because they can't copy your signature, but that's probably not the most important thing. It's really good for your motor skills, it's good for your memory, and you'll also be helping keep this beautiful form of writing alive. And as I said, there are people who make a living out of writing cursive, really beautifully, cursive writing really beautifully, and designing, cards, birthday cards, invitations, things like that. And if you do write beautiful cursive letters, people will definitely comment on it, and it'll be something you can be kind of proud of. And it's also a wonderful skill to have.
And we're going to talk about that kind of thing in today's For You Chat question. So let's go there right now.
For You Chat.
So our question is, do you think it's important to have good handwriting? Why or why not? And by this we mean in the modern age.
I see. Well, I would say yes, it's important to have good handwriting, but it's not as important as some other skills that might be useful in your life, right? So it's important to know how to swim. I would even say it's more important to know how to cook or something like that. But knowing how to do beautiful cursive handwriting is a very useful skill, as I think we've mentioned. So I would say yes, and it's something you learn as a kid, often in school. So I think, why not go for it?
Yeah, I think in later life, it depends on whether anybody reads it or not. If you're only writing notes to yourself, maybe to a few people who you know very well, or like me, you're kind of writing the first version of a story, no, it's not important that I have good handwriting. As I've said, my handwriting is awful, but I'm pretty much the only person who reads it, and I can read it. So that's fine. But if your job involved other people having to read the notes you wrote down, maybe teachers who need to write on boards still, because that still happens. When I came to Taiwan to teach English, I spent an hour practicing writing nicely so my students could read my handwriting.
I see.
Because it was so bad.
Okay, well, that's a really good point. It kind of depends on the job you have. And certain jobs would definitely, it would be useful if you're a reporter writing down what people are saying. Or if you work somewhere like maybe in a kitchen, if you're a cook in a kitchen, you can't walk around with a typewriter writing down the foods you need. So having good handwriting can be very, very useful. It's clear, you can read it, you do it quickly, and then other people can understand it. I say, why not?
Yeah, well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for watching, everyone. For English for You, I'm Pat.
And I'm Mike.
We'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
Take care.
Vocabulary Review. Charming. This store has a charming display of cute toys in its front window. Motor. Jerry hurt his hand in an accident. He's had trouble with his motor skills since. Function. Your lungs can do many things, but breathing is their main function. Require. It requires a lot of skill and years of practice to play guitar really well. Historical. Many people visit this old town to see its historical temple, which was built over 1,000 years ago. Vanish. A rat ran by Judy and vanished under the sofa, never to be seen again.
智慧小补帖
Digital. Concentration. Document. Signature.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net